Well, hello everybody. It's great to have you on the live stream if you're watching right now. If you actually are watching right now, please let us know where you're from in the chat. I see that Anders is already here from Orsa, Sweden, and it says hand waving. So, hi, Anders. How are you, Anders? So today, I got something really cool for you. I have my good friend Simon Candy from Acoustic Guitar Lessons Online.net. And today we are going to talk about double stops. So that might be a term that maybe some of you have heard before. It's actually a really simple thing. It gets used everywhere in music all the time. So I thought it would be a good thing to talk about in regards to rhythm guitar, but I want you to also keep in mind that it also gets used in lead guitar playing all the time. So when it kind of sounds like a lead, but sort of sounds like rhythm, and you can't really say, well, that's rhythm and that's lead, and it's kind of like this in between thing. Chances are they're probably using double stops, and it just kind of sounds like a hybrid of the two. So whether you're interested in rhythm guitar, that's the reason you're here, or if you're more interested in lead guitar, this is going to help everybody all the time. And now we got Bob from Illinois. And hey, Bob, how are you? So without further ado, here is my good friend Simon Candy.
Hey Mark, how you
Hey,
doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm trying to figure out my mute button so we don't have like an echo or a delay.
Oh,
Here, hold on.
sure.
There we go. I got it. I figured it out.
It's not too bad, but yeah, that's not a problem. Well, thanks for having me here, Mark. Always good to do a stream with you.
Yeah, it's cool. So I figured when we were scheduled to do this, I've seen you play a lot. I know that you use it in your everyday playing. It's
hmm
not necessarily in original compositions, and as well as performing other people's pieces of music. And it's pretty cool because I think it's a very underutilized thing that guitar players actually don't go to, and I really think they should.
Yes.
That and also using just like three note triads. Also, that's something
Yeah.
that I just don't see enough people. Meaning, like students of mine, like really like kind of go into that. It always seems like the guys that are at sort of like pro level are the only ones that use it, and it's like
Mm.
it's not that hard using
No.
these double stops or three string triads. But for today's talk is the double stop thing because it really, really sets you apart and can make you sound like you're at another level because typically you usually just hear that with pro level guitar players.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. Definitely. It adds more depth to your playing, more contrast, um, and by double stop we just simply mean playing two notes at the same time. That's essentially what a double stop is. And because it's not, arguably you could maybe call it a chord, but you kind of really need three notes apart from power chords, to have the full chord, but they can certainly imply chords, so they can be used in a very much a rhythm guitar sense, and you can create some really nice harmonies around a double stop, even with some other notes added. We could get to that too, but yeah, it can certainly open up, as you said, both your lead playing for sure. But if we're thinking more rhythm guitar, well, there's a lot we can do with double stops in a rhythm guitar context as well. To, like you say, sort of blur the lines of rhythm and lead guitar. Um, as is often the case. So yeah, I think they're great, and they're not super hard, as you said, but they sound more. They just have a certain contrast to what you are doing around them, so they stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for anybody interested in lead guitar kind of stuff and you don't know what to do or this is your first time doing it, we're going to start talking about certain ways to play two notes on adjacent strings. But if you just want to get started and you don't want to be implying chord sounds and things of that nature, if you know the minor pentatonic position 1 pattern and you
We all
just
know that.
simply play 2 strings every time instead of 1, that is the easiest way to get started in either understand what the sound is like, and give you an idea of actually what a double stop is, because you've heard it before. And then what we're going to really do is take it a next step further. But like if you have no idea what we're talking about, if you just play 2 notes, same fret, okay? Go ahead, go for it. Show me an example of just doing some double stops with that.
Okay, so you're talking about the pentatonic scale. So if we've got pentatonic scale that we all know, I'm sure, then we can just simply, it can get a little muddier in the lower register, but certainly on top we can just play the adjacent strings of the notes in the scale and the adjacent strings. I'm just barring here to sound just 2 strings at a time. Sometimes I might use my third and my pinky, depending if I want to get a bit of vibrato on it. It's easier with 2 separate fingers than perhaps just the one, but you know, the way you fret it will depend on what you're doing. But yeah, that's a really good entry, I think, into double stops. If you don't know what they are, you've never used them or considered them, then take a familiar scale shape like the pentatonic scale, where the notes are in the same frets. When you play them as double stops, for the most part, becomes quite easy, and you can hear that texture that's enough to imply harmony, because it is harmony. Maybe not the full chord, but imply chords. But and as you say, it could be used in single note lines too to create nice contrast.
Absolutely. So, is that coming through?
Yep,
Okay.
got it.
So, anyways, so for anybody who's like into rock or whatever, you want overdrive and distortion. I mean, the idea is this. You've heard it a million times in guitar solos. So that's what we mean by double stops. That's what double stops are, in the sense of like lead guitar kind of stuff. And it does imply harmony, and it does fatten it up. It doesn't sound like single note stuff. So that's the great place to start. We're all very familiar with that in the sense of like listening to lead guitar. But what I would like to get into now is when we play major and minor chords, they're comprised of 3 notes. And the first note and the last note, so to speak, of both chords are the same. It's the one other note that's different, and it's only 1 fret apart from each other, and that's what makes a major sound, and that's what makes a minor sound. Not to get too deep into the weeds of music theory, but there's only 1 note that's the difference between an A major and an A minor, and that 1 note is only 1 fret apart. Okay, so if we were just to take 2 of those 3 notes and we pick the root note and the most important note that makes it sound like it's major or minor, now we're implying a major chord sound or a minor chord sound. So everything that we gave as far as examples so far was playing those notes that we were doing on the same fret. So everything that we're going to talk about moving forward, these shapes that I'm going to show you, those shapes, if they're on the same fret, they're going to be fourths. And that is going to be on every pair of strings except strings 2 and 3. So let me show you what I'm talking about, okay? I got to bring up a diagram here. Where's my design? They move things around here on me.
Keep you on your toes.
All right, so there we go. So when we were playing those, when I was playing my riffs on pentatonic and stuff, so most of what I was doing and most of what Simon was doing is we were playing the same notes. I'm sorry, 2 notes on the same fret. 2 notes on the same fret. Words are hard, Simon. Words are hard. So,
You,
so having those fourths, that actually implies a chord sound also. Okay. But that's almost like a reverse power chord in a way.
yeah.
So it doesn't really indicate a major or a minor sound. Okay. So, but the first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about this shape right here. So, this shape right here, where we have two notes on adjacent strings and the thinner of the two strings is only 1 fret lower, that is a major third. So if you're looking at this diagram right here, the note on the left hand side on your lower string is your root note. The one on the right hand side is your major third. So now that shape can be used on every pair of strings except for strings 2 and 3. So that's always going to be true on the guitar. So if you want to make something sound like a major chord, you would use that shape. Okay. So now, moving on to the next thing, if we want to imply a minor chord sound, we would have our root note on the bass string of whatever pair of strings we're playing. So in this case, it's the one on the left. And then if you notice, the one on the right is 2 frets lower on the next higher string. So there's going to be 1 fret in between those two notes. That implies a minor chord sound. So by using those two shapes, we can actually imply major and minor sounding chords. Now, the cool thing about it also is because we're only using two notes, is that the diminished chord that's in a major or a minor key, we use the minor third. So we can actually even imply a diminished chord if we wanted to play the full spectrum of every single chord in a major or a minor key. So there's our foundation. Now we're going to take it to how do we end up using this kind of stuff? So, Simon, what would be a good way for somebody just to take these two basic chord shapes? I'll call them chord shapes for lack of a better word.
Sure.
These finger shapes.
Hmm.
So, what would be a good way for somebody to approach first understanding how to use this stuff?
So I like to, when I have a new shape to learn on the guitar or there's a new chord shape, etc., I want to relate it back to previous knowledge. I want to be able to relate it to something I already can visualize on the fretboard. So this it wouldn't be the only way to work with thirds and other harmonies that are double stops, two notes. But if you think of the root 6 bar chord form, if we know that shape, inside that shape is that third, right? It's the two middle strings of the root 6 bar chord. In this case, I'm playing A. So I can see the shape and I can place it as an A because I don't have to play this, but I can visualize it to find that harmony. The other way, if you didn't know this chord, would be to find the root note of the diad, the double stop that we're playing here, on the fourth string. That's an A, so we create that shape that Mark had up on the screen before. Adjacent frets, you could use your first and second, second and third, depends on the context of what you're using, how you're using it. But you can have that in the within the context of the chord. So it's an easy way to ground it on the fretboard, anchor it down. If we want the minor shape, we think of this minor root 6 bar chord shape and take out the same equivalent notes on the middle two strings, strings 3 and 4, and we get the little minor third harmony there. So we've got major third to imply the major chord, minor third to imply the minor chord. So one way we could take that and create something with it, or do you want to interject here, Mark? Or keep going? Yeah. Okay, so one way we could use that is if someone, let's say, was playing a chord progression, it was an A to an E to a D back to an A chord. So we're just playing a 1, 5, 4, back to 1 chord progression. And they could be strumming away or doing whatever they're doing down here on that chord progression. And you can come in with a little harmony that will sit nicely on top of those chords. It'll create an additional part that will go really nicely with the chords down here or wherever the other person is playing the chords. So you could be here while they're on the A chord. When they change to E, you're up here because you're grabbing the same little major third harmony out of now the E root 6 major bar chord form. So you're not playing this at all, you're just using it as a visual aid, or you're just finding the root note on the 4th string. Chord goes to D down here, you drop it down to D and then bring it back to A. So just that on top of these chords creates a bigger sound, more depth to it because you've got something sitting on top. This will sound sort of like a little bit like strings. If I was on an electric guitar here and I played these and used my volume to sort of volume swells to bring it in and out, it would sound like strings, a string sort of arrangement addition to the chords. But without that, it sounds fine too. We can just play like so. But if I'm playing on my own, I would bring in open strings around the double stop, the harmony here. So I've got that as my bass, but it's an A chord. I can pluck the low A string with this double stop and I can pick open strings up top, which will at times give me some extensions to the overall sound too. This becomes an add 9 chord. We don't have to know all this, but just knowing that we can bring that in. And when I go to E, I just bring in the low E string with that harmony. And then D, now when we get to D, we could just play from the 4th string. We don't get the open string because we've got a finger on there. We could just take that finger off just to maintain that sort of, you know, keep the root notes of the chords kind of in the same octave, within the same octave. So we could do that. There's another third that lives in the root 6 major bar chord form too, which is the same shape, but it's on the 2nd and 3rd strings. And again, if we put them together, we get a little triad. So they're all kind of, you know, modular and they all fit together in different ways. But there is a little third here that you can get with the same shape, but you put it on the 2nd and 3rd strings. In fact, sorry, correction, that is a minor third, but it's still a third, and it's still going to imply the major chord, because within a major chord, the 1, the 3, the 5, we've got 2 intervals. We've got a major third and a minor third, stacked thirds. So there is a minor third inside the major chord, and I'm going to still be implying D major with that. The reason for moving that up is to expose the open D string, but you could just take the finger off of that from the original third shape and it will be fine. But the idea is just to bring open strings around. We'll go with that one and back to the A. So you can get some really, really nice sounds with minimal effort, really, because they're 2-fingered chords, but they're big open sounds because you've got the open strings droning in around them. And that'll sound great on its own, nice and full, but it will also sound good over chords. One thing, just if we bring it to, I just thought of an example of this being in a particular song, this exact concept, as I'm illustrating it here in the application, is Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. So we've got this progression in 6/8 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A C, a D to a C. So it's an E minor chord, D to C. Now, in that song, it's either the 2nd or 3rd verse, we get this little over the top of that progression. And then it goes. These are all little thirds that we've been talking about. Then it's the G, B7 back to the E minor. If I kind of put in the root notes here perhaps, so you can hear it in context more. So that's an example of thirds being overlaid on top of a chord progression. Hotel California, check that song out. That's got the same sort of thing happening. So you hear it in music all the time, and sometimes it's just that subtle little thing that comes in that gives you that sense of development in the song. And without it, you'd notice that something was missing. It wouldn't have the same sort of build. It really starts to create a bigger sound and development to then, continue, moving through the song. So yeah, so that'd be one application of the third harmony. And just a way I like to teach it is to see it within the bigger root 6 bar chord form, if you know that shape, because it helps ground it on the fretboard.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's a really good point. If you already know your bar chords, they just sit right inside of them. So
Yeah.
if you're not familiar with where all your root notes are on your D string, you'll know exactly where the root note is because it's going to be 2 frets away from your first finger, wherever it is on your, on your low E string. So that's a really easy way to actually be aware of the notes on that string, is because if you just skip a string and move up 2 frets, that's an octave. It's the same note. So,
Yes.
one other thing that I really like that you touched upon, which I don't think people do enough necessarily, and I like what you said. We don't necessarily need to know what we're playing, all those
Mm.
extensions and stuff. If you take these shapes and you start moving them around the fretboard and start adding open strings like you were, your ear is going to tell you if the open string sounds good, if the fret that you're doing in it, so if it sounds good. So, I mean, I highly suggest that, you could just take these shapes and move them. You don't even have to switch between them. You could just pick one shape and move it up and down the fretboard and see where it sounds good and what open strings sound good with what and not. You're doing something that's very musical and can be explained, but you don't need to know what you're doing. As long as it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah.
So I think the experimentation of doing stuff on the guitar isn't encouraged enough either. You don't necessarily need to know what you're doing. You could just make sounds on the guitar, and if you put a certain sequence together and it sounds good, then it's good.
Yeah.
Don't
Absolutely.
worry that you don't know really what you're doing, but I'm sure there's an explanation for it, but you don't have to know what that is.
Exactly. I mean, it's that sort of thing. I think it's the learn to play it first before you understand it. Do first, then the understanding can come later. And as you build your knowledge, that can kind of happen at the same time too, as you know more about harmony and so forth. But yeah, if it sounds good, I mean, different because the open strings stay constant, they don't change. But the harmony is then they're going to react differently to it. So against the A here, I know that's going to be nice because all those open strings are in that key. If I take it down to an F, that's a really nice sound. We've got this note that's not in the key of F major. That's a B natural note, gives it that mystical Lydian sound if you're on with the modes. But again, you just hear it and you just decide, does that sound good? Do I like that? What if I mean, to me, there's no bad sound. It's just different degrees of tension and release, dissonance and consonance, and context matters. So anything can work. Obviously, you can play something within a context and it doesn't sound good. That's fine. But that thing in itself doesn't mean it doesn't sound good. Period. It just doesn't sound good in the context in which you're using it. But yeah, just play around and move the one shape around. I mean, I'm just moving it up chromatically here, so it's not in any particular key, but you're just experimenting with the sounds and it opens your ear up. And, as I said, the understanding, and as you say, Mark, can come later. Or not at all, and you can still learn the sounds and do amazing things with them without necessarily being able to, explain it from a theory standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. Do it and then figure it out later if you have any interest in it.
Yeah, exactly.
you know, Make some music.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. And the cool thing about it too, especially if you're playing either electric guitar and you got a clean sound, or you have an acoustic guitar and you're just really not like in a practice mode where you're going to try to totally improve a specific skill and you're very goal orientated, whatever your session is. If you're just messing about with your guitar, that's the kind of stuff you should be messing about with,
Mm.
experimenting with sounds and actually just enjoying the sound of the instrument and finding out what things sound good with what, and not necessarily having a specific plan in mind, but you're just really really getting to know the instrument a little bit better on a different level than saying, okay, now I need to practice my bar chords, now I need to practice these inversions of chords, and now I need to work on the specific rhythm for the song. That's okay. I mean, you keep doing that kind of stuff, but plenty of times, instead of playing something you already know for the enjoyment of the instrument, this is actually an easy way to actually enjoy your instrument as well, but you actually can learn something while you're doing it without having to be an intense, focused practice session.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So we got Jeff. Jeff chimed in. Jeff from Virginia. Hey, Jeff. Thanks for joining us. I just wanted to let you know that if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them for you. So now, Simon, so we were just talking about complementing already an existing chord progression, or possibly just taking these shapes and experimenting with open chords, open strings, and moving them around different frets and things of that nature. I kind of wouldn't mind getting into being very specific between the two shapes within a key. So we'll
Yep.
just take the key of, let's just say, C major. So the notes of C major are C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And now there's going to be corresponding chords associated with every single note. So I think on the middle two strings of the guitar might be a good place to start, just because, well, no. Let's start on strings 4 and 5. That way you could run all the way up and not run out of room on your acoustic guitar neck.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah,
That's a better way
exactly.
to start.
Right. So we'll take those two shapes. And so
Yep.
as a reminder, I'm going to bring up the diagram again. So Simon's going to play the C note on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. And so he's going to play this little 2 note. Oh, sorry, wrong one. My bad.
So that
This
one.
little 2, there you go. He's playing that little 2 note 1. And now the next note in the scale is a D. So his root note is going to be 2 frets higher. And then he's going to play this particular shape. So that's our minor shape, okay? So just a quick reminder of major and minor. So minor is where the notes are further apart. Major is when they are on the very next fret. All right, so now when we go up to the very next note, okay, so we have our E note. So now we're going to be playing a minor chord. And then we go up to F, which is 1 note higher on your fretboard for the root note, and that's a major chord. And then we go up 2 frets. We play another major. Now we're on A, right?
I'm on A now. Yeah, A
Yeah,
minor.
now we're on A. Okay, so now we're playing the minor chord shape.
Yep.
And then if
And
we
then-
go up 2 more frets, we're going to play the minor chord shape because we're going to apply that diminished chord.
Yes.
So could you run from the beginning up to the B diminished and then back down again with those 2 shapes, just so people could hear the scale, but they're also implying the chords in the key as well?
Yeah. Yep. So I'll
Cool.
play up. So we got. Okay, the octave, and then we come back down. So essentially, you're harmonizing the C major scale on the 5th string. If we just isolate that note, that's a C major scale. And And from each note in that scale, we're harmonizing with another note from within the scale, which will be 2 frets or the next 2 notes later in the scale. So we're harmonizing with the note on the 4th string, and together we get either this shape or this shape. And if you know the harmony that exists in a major key, it goes major on 1, 4 and 5, 2, 3 and 6 are minor, and 7 is diminished. So that's why or if we say it in order, major, minor, minor, major, minor, did I say major, minor, minor, major, major, and then minor and diminished. So we're implying those chords. That's the major chord off the 1st degree of the scale. Then we get the minor chord of the 2nd degree and the 3rd degree, because they're minor chords off of the 2nd and 3rd degrees. Then we get the major on the 4 and the 5, get the minor on the 6, and the diminished on the 7. And because the diminished has the same first 2 notes, the 1st and the 3rd are the same as in any minor chord, that's why that shape is enough to imply the B diminished. We don't need to change anything there. We've got the B diminished being implied and then just the octave. So when you learn that sequence, which is so important to know, really, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, it shows you the sequence, and you sort of see, okay, I start on my root, then I get 2 of these guys, then I get 2 of these guys, and then I get 2 of these guys. So you're almost working in just 2s. After you establish the root, then it's going to be just 2 of each, then switch 2 of those, and then switch back to the 2 minors. So that's a way to sort of lock into that sequence. If you were just purely working on learning it, you got no theory knowledge, so minors, majors doesn't make any sense to you, you can just pick up on that sequence, which is going to be reflected in other double stop combinations too, like sixths and tenths and fourths and so forth. It's going to follow this sort of 2 pairings of shapes. Not quite all the way, because from the root you're going to then immediately go to the minor shape, but there's a sequence that reveals itself.
Can I just interject real quick? So as far as the notes go on your A string playing that major scale, it's very easy to remember because it's 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12.
Yes.
Right. So like if you don't know the notes on your A string, it's pretty easy just to remember. You do 3, 5, 7 odd numbers, then 8, 10, 12 even numbers.
Yes.
And so like if you're going, okay, yeah, well this is all great, but I don't even know the names of the notes on my A string, it's actually pretty easy to remember. The A string's easy to remember. 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12, and then you just apply those shapes.
Yep.
Yeah, so go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to point out that it's actually not that big of a deal to know all the natural notes on that particular string.
Yes.
Because they kind of lay out like fairly easily, you know?
Yeah.
So just like what prompted me to interject was because how you said you do things in 2s after you establish it. It's sort of like learning the notes is like the first 3 notes are the same distance apart, and then you move up 1 fret, and then the next 3 notes are the same distance apart.
Yes.
So if you're like want to visually see it, just like the way that you presented 2, 2, 2, 2 after you establish the first note, it makes a lot of sense, and it's not that hard to learn those natural notes on that string.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Not of course. So yes, so that's one position that you could play it, and then from there, I mean, if you wanted to do something with it, again, open strings could come into those shapes. If you wanted, you're pretty safe in the key of C because all the open strings are natural notes and are in the key of C. So if you're harmonizing in the key of C, or even A major, E major to a point, you'd want to be careful of the G in E major, D major. You know, these sorts of keys are good for the open strings, and you know, we can get a bigger sound with the thirds, or we could just use them in the way that, you know, we were talking about before. But if you take that sequence, and if I did bring it to another string, like here I can relate it to the bar chord shape as I was before. That's your root position. That's inside. That's the root chord, C major, and there's the little harmony within it. So you're going to have two of these either side. See here we didn't go this side of it. We're going to run out of fretboard. But if we have it more, in a position where I can go either side of the root of the harmony here, then you'll find that once you've got the root, it's going to be two minor shapes above it and two minor shapes below it. And what happens if someone's, again, just another way of application, someone's sitting on a C chord for a couple of bars maybe, you don't have to stay right here. You can play a little line on top of that static C chord. You're just playing a little counter melody, a little line underneath perhaps a vocal or in an instrumental break, whatever it might be. Someone's sitting there just strumming a C for a couple of bars or even just a bar, and you can create movement and bring it back to this third, or this would imply a C major chord here too. So it'd be good to, perhaps record yourself playing a C major chord for a couple of minutes, or get a track with just a single chord and just hear, and just, it's no different to taking notes from the scale and creating a little line, but harmonizing it with your thirds. And again, if you're stepping down from the root here, if you've done your two little minor shapes, then you know there's going to be two major shapes there. So you can extend beyond that. So that's going to be true wherever you put that third harmony on the top string. That one, sorry, I was in the wrong position there actually, I should have been up here. That's where the root is. But then you're going to get the same little sequence all the time. You just got to know where you are in that sequence, and then it will just play out the same on any string set. And there's some ideas that you could play around with and get some inner movement, if you like, over a static chord.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. That's actually really good. It doesn't matter what type of guitar you're playing, acoustic or electric, it's always going to work. It's always going to work. It works with a clean electric guitar sound, a distorted electric guitar sound. I mean, the intervals will sound a little more abrasive, but that's might be what you're going for, type of thing.
Yep.
So, it could be used in every application, in any kind of music, all the time. And once you start getting used to using it, I believe that it's actually something that you'll end up actually probably using quite a bit. But it's just a matter of getting used to it and being familiar with where do these shapes land and what key that I'm in. And, nobody says you have to learn your fretboard tomorrow and know all this. It could be a long process of just like, okay, I know where the major and minors are in the key of C on the middle two strings, and then that's fine. And then 2 months later, you learn where it is on the next two strings, and then maybe you pick a different key and things like that. Or maybe it's just that you have a need to do it because you're going to jam with someone and they have a chord progression in D minor, and it's just like, all right, well, give me a minute, let me figure it out. It's okay. You don't need to know everything right off the top of your head just like that. You know what I mean? You could take a minute. We're not in a recording studio that costs big bucks and you have to actually instantly do something. Sometimes you could just take a minute and figure something out so it'll sound cool and creative. I think people have this unnecessary feeling that they need to have everything on command instantly. Not so much. Not so much. That's not real life as far as guitar playing goes.
Exactly.
I mean, if you have something that's an organized situation, even if it's just a jam session, it's just sort of like, are we playing certain songs? Are we going to just wing it? But if there's going to be some kind of jam session with organized songs and extended sections where there's going to be improvisation, you have all the time in the world to prepare for it. So it's actually not that big of a deal, if you don't know everything instantly right now.
Yes. You just need a little bit of it, and you can go a long way with that. And then you can just add to it as you go, as you want.
Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right. So, one thing before we go, I did want to just touch upon. I just put my guitar down, so maybe you could do it for me. So,
Yep.
keeping within the key, if we were going to be playing a particular chord progression, or even if you just pick two chords and go back and forth, to maybe use them as a chord substitution, meaning like a full chord substitution, instead of playing the full chord where you're going to play like open strings or bar chords or something, maybe you'll just, pedal back and forth between the two notes of the chord that you're implying. Okay. And then maybe also give us an example of what it would be like to like have a fill, just this quick little 3-note or 2-note kind of thing right before the next chord change.
So, just the first one, what were you talking? Like, you mean playing them separately, or?
Yeah, and you would use that in place of, like, say you were going to be playing an A minor chord, you would just pedal back and forth between those two.
Over an A minor? I don't know if I'm understanding exactly what you're saying. So, is there just one chord happening here that I'm playing over, or is there a chord change? You've muted, Mark. You're muted.
Like, say for example, you're just going from an A minor to a G chord,
Yep.
and then you're just kind of going back and forth 4 beats each. But instead of playing the A minor chord the way you typically would be strumming it, you just would be playing that root in minor third and maybe pedal back and forth between the two. So you're
Right.
you're implying that chord, but you're not playing the same chord. So that was like the first example, and the second one
Yep.
would be using fills with the harmony added to it.
Okay, so yeah, let's say we've got A minor for a bar and G. So that could be plain, and we could be just playing the little third harmony here, which is coming out of that bar chord shape, down to the G, which is coming from the G major bar chord shape. So they're your two positions. But we could imply the chord just by playing the notes of the harmony. And we can, as I'm doing here, we don't always have to play them together. We can play them separately and create a little bit more of a single note line in a sense, but you could have them ringing over the top of each other when you play them separately to still get that chordal sort of sound, or you could play them separately, but you are just sort of outlining the progression using the single notes of the double stop, or the two notes of the double stop, but in a singular sort of way. And then if we're looking at sort of playing something in between the chords, you could either, let's see, so you could use other shapes around the ones you're targeting here. So let's say we're going from A minor, and our target is going to be the G, but before the G we might drop down to F and slide up to that G. So and as we do, that's right when the G is hitting. So you got that G, A, and there's our G. You might go, so you can sort of use the sort of other shapes that are within close proximity of each other to create this little movement over the chords. This implies an F chord, but over the top of the G, it's fine. It's going to create a little bit of tension there and resolve, not too much because it's all in key, but tension nonetheless. It might imply a little bit of a 9 chord there over the G. Again, you don't need to know this stuff. It's just sounds you're going to access as a result. The other thing with double stops is you've got all these Hendrix sort of rhythm fills Like that's all double stop stuff for the most part. Most times when you're playing those sorts of fills, it's double stops, two notes, little ornamentations and embellishments on them with hammer-ons and pull-offs. But that's all. I'm just still thinking of this A minor to G. So you got like A minor, the G, the A minor, So there's little fills and things. We've done things like this before, Mark. I'm sure there'll be plenty of stuff on your channel and as well as mine with rhythm fills. So double stops sort of, are part of that sound as well. And so it's that nice texture you get with the two notes sounding together and the little embellishments around them that you can use as little fills between, a chord vamp or a chord progression. Always sounds good. A riff that always comes to mind with double stops that does a similar sort of thing. It's over an A minor and an F chord, and it's essentially that is the chord progression, but you get the right. That's all double stops. And then F. And just pedaling the root notes of the chord. So that's a great example. I mean, that just makes the song, doesn't it? If it's just the A minor for 2 bars to an F, I mean, that's cool, but it's got so much more of a distinct and recognizable sound to it with that, third part added in.
Yeah, if you played that same melody just with single notes, it just
doesn't. But with the harmony, and then with the root note, there you go. You've got a great line that's obviously 90% of that song is that, or 80% of the song is just that. So yeah, that's a good example of some double stops, and it's sort of used in the way that we're talking about today.
Yes, excellent. Thank you for those examples. That's exactly what I was talking about, and I'm glad you segued right into that song because, like I said, if you don't play those double stops in that song and you only played the single note melody line, it sounds so weak.
Yeah.
But it just sounds so good. And, really the when you boil it down, it just is those double stops. I mean, you're adding, some other stuff here and there, but if you only played the double stops, it still sounds good all by itself, standing all alone.
Yep. It's like when you go see someone playing any sort of live setup, if you've got harmony vocals coming in at different points within the song, it just makes such a difference, particularly if it's a little duo, 2 acoustic guitars, and you hear that harmony coming in the chorus or somewhere in the song. It sounds so good, and that's exactly, it's just, he's the lead vocalist, he's the harmony singer, and they're gonna sing a line together. It's the same thing. It just thickens up the sound, and if everything was like that, it'd be too much. But when it's in and out, you go to strumming chords in the chorus and then back to that line, or the harmony vocal comes in the chorus and then the verse is just the lead vocal, or however it's set up. Those harmony vocals just sound so good, and that's exactly what we're doing here, just on the guitar.
Exactly. Well, that's awesome. Well, Simon, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and talk about this kind of stuff. I know that you actually have something that you would like to talk about. So I'm going to put it up on the screen, and you could tell everybody all about this resource that you have.
Sure. So this is an ebook with embedded audio. So basically, it's using chords to solo. So along the lines of what we're talking about here today, double stops, sometimes another note added in, so it's more of a chord. Ways to create more depth and contrast and dynamics to your lines in the way that we've demonstrated today through harmony and double stops. So there's, I think, 5 different approaches to that, and each one will have a link that will take you through to the audio recording of that so you can hear how it's meant to sound, and you can start to bring in things like we're doing today, bring in some texture to your single note lines to create the, bigger sort of scope of sound that we've been talking about today. So that's essentially what that ebook is. And I'm sure is there a link there, or you'll put a link somewhere there, Mark, for the download there, but it's free. Just punch in your details and that'll be delivered to you via email straight away. And that will give you some ideas along the lines of what we've been talking about today.
Yes, there'll be a link in the description of the replay for the YouTubers who watch this.
Yeah,
make it nice, right. Make it nice and easy for them. Well, very cool. That's very cool. I actually have something too that is totally free as well. There it is. Okay, so this is the beginner's guide to adding lead guitar elements to your rhythm guitar playing. So this isn't exactly what we were talking about today, but it's another aspect of how you could play single note melody lines in between your chord changes. So if you don't know anything about that, that's okay. That's exactly what this is. It is the beginner's guide. If you know how to play some single notes in between chords, or some scales and you could play any note you want within that scale, this book is not for you. But who it is for is if you ever wondered, how do people know what notes to play in between chords when they're playing rhythm guitar, just as like a little fill, this is the free resource for you. It has audio examples, it has diagrams, it tells you exactly what notes to play, and the audio will match that, so it'll sound like the way the audio recording is if you're doing it correctly. So here again, that's at rhythmguitarlessons.net/pro. You don't necessarily have to capitalize the P in pro. It'll get you there, whatever you want to do. So anyways, check out those free resources. I want to thank you again, Simon, very much for taking the time out of your day and going over this cool stuff with us. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, it was very cool. And I guess with that, I will say goodbye to YouTube land, and sit tight, Simon, while I end the stream, okay?